Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1280, Monday, November 16th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, hopefully you're actually able to view this video on Monday morning. Last week, there were some things that were going on last week with YouTube that's never happened to me before. Essentially what's going on, I had two failed uploads last week. One was a double fail upload, and what is going on is that it's the exact same thing that I'm hearing other YouTubers, including Sticks, describe. The exact same thing. Your video goes through the upload process. Once it gets to about 95%, then it's essentially uploaded, but there's a 5% remaining, and that is the processing. It'll hit that last 5%, it'll be uploaded, you'll be sitting there looking at it, it's 95% uploaded, waiting for processing, but then it hits that last 5% of processing, and it just sits there and clocks and clocks and clocks and clocks and never finalizes. And Sticks was suggesting that that's when it's actually being evaluated by some system or something that is evaluating the video, looking for certain things that may prevent it from being uploaded. I have not received any message from YouTube whatsoever or Google telling me that there's any issues with my videos or with my channel. I've never had a strike on my channel. I've never had a single email from YouTube or Google telling me there's any issues with my content. Nothing like that's ever happened to me. There's certainly something that's it's not right that's going on here. I've uploaded too many videos. I know the process. I know how long it takes and that type of thing. So there's definitely a full court press right now to tamp down on anyone who is questioning the results of the election or anything like that. And so I really don't know where it goes from here. I'm hoping this video uploads okay, but I don't know. A lot of things are up in the air with me and with my channel right now, based on some information we're going to talk about today, and what will happen here in the next few weeks will determine what happens, I'm sure, with my channel. But I can be pretty certain that if I continue to try to do YouTube videos and things like that, that I'll most certainly be moving away from YouTube. And I'm considering at this point the place I would likely go is Rumble. Of course, Rumble being the new platform that's partly owned by Dan Bongino. Right now, I understand that you're able to upload there without any real problems of censoring or anything like that. But you have to remember that the system itself is still Google. Okay, it's still you can create your own website and everything like that, but you're still relying on the powers that be to bring all that together. So it doesn't preclude them from banning you on Rumble either. That could eventually face censorship as well. So this is the problem that we are facing all across the various platforms, from YouTube to Facebook to you name it. It's a very massive coordinated attack on anyone trying to bring some truth to the game. I have no other agendas. Obviously, I'm a Trump supporter, but I was doing videos before Trump. I started doing videos back when Ron Paul was running. I really don't know what to say at this point, other than I'm going to continue to kind of forge my way through over the next couple of weeks. I think here in the next couple of weeks we are going to know some things about what the future holds for content creators like myself, the election, and of course the primary story that I cover here is the Spygate story. We have news on that today. It's not good, but it's certainly predictable. So anyway, that's where it stands today. I'll keep you guys posted on a day-by-day basis of what things look like. But obviously here in a couple of weeks we're going to have a better idea of where all this is going, and that'll guide my decision on when I move over to Rumble. I think that's if I continue to maintain a YouTube channel, I think it's going to be on. Won't be a YouTube channel, but if I continue to do videos, it'll most likely will end up being on Rumble. So anyway, I'll keep you posted on that. But let's go ahead and get into the news of the day. God willing, you're actually able to watch this video. So I guess probably one of the most depressing things I read over the weekend was the story that appeared on Gateway Pundit. And the source of that story is Sean Davis, the editor of The Federalist, who's very, very solid, very, very reliable. Pretty rare that Sean Davis gets anything wrong. He has a lot of sources. And he sent out a tweet. The Gateway Pundit story was based on his tweet. And essentially what Sean Davis is saying is that based on sources he has that have good insight into the Durham investigation, is that Durham is dropping the investigation, that he's not even working on it right now. And that the reason is because he is worried about blowback from the Joe Biden administration. So Durham must know a lot of things that we don't know. Sean Davis says his source has seen the evidence. It is overwhelming evidence that would be able to justify dropping multiple indictments on the Spygate coup plotters. But at this time, it looks like the whole Barr and Durham thing was a circus act. It was done to placate Trump supporters who are angry, to get us to believe there was an actual investigation going on, to drag us down the road until they could finally get another chance to off Trump. And now we're there. And this is probably exactly what the plan was from day one. Barr has deceived us. Durham has deceived us. Everyone has deceived us. And, it doesn't look like we can vote ourselves out of this problem. It doesn't look like we can legislate ourselves out of this problem. It doesn't look like we can litigate ourselves out of this problem. The only options I see available to us are the unthinkable and the unspeakable. I hope I'm wrong. Sidney Powell and Rudy were on Maria Bartiromo on Sunday morning. And I don't know that I've ever seen Sidney Powell so angry and frustrated and miffed about things. You can tell she gets irritated about a lot of the things, especially throughout the Flynn investigation or the Flynn hearings or what have you, the Flynn prosecution or whatever. But she always seems to maintain herself pretty well. But the last 2 or 3 times I've seen her on Lou Dobbs, Maria Bartiromo, she's clearly, past her limit. I'm waiting for her to have a meltdown. I mean, she's very close to a meltdown. She emphatically states that they've got the evidence. Rudy also telling Maria Bartiromo they've got the evidence to prove a widespread corruption effort to steal the election. They've done a lot of digging into this company, Dominion, and also the company that makes the software, Smart Media, or Smartmatic, I think they're called. They have all sorts of connections to all sorts of corruption. Venezuela, China, Democratic fundraisers, Democratic donors, people like Soros, power players on the left. It's a complete corrupt cabal of people that you would certainly expect whose names that you would expect to hear. It is just as I thought it was. It was essentially the third attempt at a coup, and the other 2 attempts failed. I'm hoping this attempt will fail as well, but it makes me very nervous. When the election was in the hands of the voters, I felt good about everything. And so Trump goes out and gets 9 million more votes than he got in 2016. He should have won in huge fashion. But now I'm very nervous, despite the overwhelming evidence that Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani tell us that they have, despite the overwhelming evidence. You know, we have overwhelming evidence of information on the coup plotters. It just doesn't seem like that when you run up against the deep state that there's any way that you can win. They seem to control everything. So while I am happy to hear that Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and the other lawyers working on this, and I understand DeGeneva and Tensing are also involved now, and many other lawyers, what it means and what it's come down to is that we're now relying on the establishment, the judges and the courts. Now, most of us feel pretty good about the 5 judges we have at the Supreme Court, but Justice Roberts has to be willing to hear the case in the Supreme Court. And he's not on the team. He's on the other team. He could thwart any efforts for this to go to the Supreme Court. So that means we're counting on these federal judges in the states. And we know how corrupt they are. In fact, just in the last 3 or 4 days, 6 cases brought by Trump's legal team in 2 states, Pennsylvania and Michigan, were refused by the judge, and judges, I should say. So the last 6 times that Trump's lawyers have come forward to these federal judges in Michigan and wherever, these judges have shot him down. That's despite having hundreds of sworn testimonials, witnesses, evidence of all kinds. So they're going to try to stop this by blocking them at the state level, and that will leave only one remedy, and that is to go to the Supreme Court. I assume that decision whether or not to hear these cases will go to Roberts. So he may never give the 5 conservatives on the court a chance to ever rule on anything, because he may refuse to even take the case or hear the cases. The fix is in. Again, it's not that I don't have confidence in Trump or in some of his Supreme Court nominees or some of the few people he does have that support him, or even the overwhelming amount of evidence. I'm sure they have overwhelming evidence. But it doesn't seem to matter. In fact, it almost looks to me sometimes like the deep state wants us to have the overwhelming evidence laying right there on the table, so that we can say, yes, we've got the overwhelming evidence, and they can say, yes, you do. You have the overwhelming evidence. You got us. But you know what's going to happen? Nothing. Because this is our game. We own it. We own it. It's our country, not yours. I think the deep state wants us to know that they run this game, and that no matter how much evidence we have of their criminality, they're always going to win in the end. I think they want us to know that. And they want us to heel to their power, essentially, and recognize that we're powerless to go up against them, so that we'll be discouraged and eventually just throw our hands up and walk away, which is exactly what will happen for a lot of people. People can only put forth so much energy into something. I mean, people have lives. And the people who get involved in doing things like what I do, making YouTube videos or going out and doing other things to support the president or the cause of the movement or whatever you want to call it, you do that day after day after day, year after year after year. You give it your very, very best, and at some point you realize it's nothing but an exercise in futility. And at some point you look back and say, wow, if I'd look what other things I gave up in my life. All that time, all that effort, all that energy, money, whatever it was that you gave up, probably some of all of that, you realize it was all for naught. And then you ask yourself, do I continue on for the rest of my life, pounding my head against the wall while simultaneously hurting my own cause? Or do I just say, I just got to look out for myself and hope for the best and go on? It's just like these people who, conceivably whistleblowers or what have you. They place themselves at great risk. And there's a lot of people who probably are sitting there who would like to talk and don't. Because they think, well, if I blow the whistle, the establishment's coming after me and there's no one to defend me. I can't take on the establishment. They'll destroy me. And that's exactly what the deep state wants. They want you to understand that if you try to challenge them, they will crush you like a bug. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can be one of those people who go down in history as someone no one will probably ever would have even known about. One of the thousands or tens of thousands, 100,000s, or even millions of noble patriots who stood up in the fight, but no glory. No glory at the end whatsoever. No success, no glory, nothing accomplished except for you took a decent portion of your life and your energy and you put it towards something which yielded no result. No hope of a result. That's the kind of sacrifice that you must be willing to make today if you want to be a patriot. You must be willing to give up basically what many other people will not. Sacrifice what many other people will not. Because you're hoping for an outcome that will likely never occur. So, that is the state of affairs. Now, Rudy and Sidney Powell both said that they are going to be presenting the evidence for everything they talked about on Maria Bartiromo's show, that they are going to be putting this evidence into motion this week. By the end of this week, they said that they will have these cases filed, which will include all the evidence that they have, that there was a massive election fraud, coordinated massive election fraud conspiracy that was in play. And I think that that's about what they've got. I think they got another week, maybe two, to get this evidence out there because it has to work through the legal system. And I think if we look at the results we're getting, that these judges at the state level are totally corrupted. The judges at the state level are not going to, they're not our friends, let's put it that way. They're going to try to block everything at the state level. We were counting on maybe some of these legislatures in states controlled by Republicans would stand up, but it doesn't seem like there's much fight left in them. And that leaves us with a Supreme Court issue, and that means we're counting on Roberts to even take the case, which I understand he will not take unless he believes that there's enough votes that would change the outcome of the election. And if in fact you cannot get subpoenas and warrants the way the FBI could to actually get your hands on the software or or interview these corrupt officials who are part of these companies or what have you, it really ties your hands in terms of trying to gather the evidence. However, if you get a judge to accept the case and bring forth the case, then you do have discovery. And I think that that's why the last 6 cases brought into Michigan and Pennsylvania, why those federal judges shot all that down, because they know if they allow them cases to go forward, then Trump's lawyers will have discovery, and they will then be able to subpoena the software company and all these other people who they've targeted, who they've got information from eyewitnesses, from whistleblowers, whatever you want to call them, who've given them information. They will know exactly who to call, what questions to ask, and everything else. By depriving Trump's lawyers the ability to gather the evidence, it will prevent them from being able to get the Supreme Court to hear the case. That appears to be the deep state strategy right now. Whether or not Powell and Rudy can overcome that, I don't know. Whether or not some honest member of the Supreme Court steps up, like Alito has already, in some way, in a small way, has already commented on some of this. Maybe it's within his power to move on this. I just don't know. But it's a very fluid situation right now. And I just don't know where it's going to go. It's going to be day by day, probably for the next several weeks. But somewhere there around the 7th, 8th, 9th of December, these states are going to have to certify their elections. And that's probably when it's all going to come to an end. And we're going to know. Maybe sooner than then. But at least ways by then, that's probably the latest that you can go. At that point, you have to either fish or cut bait. And I think we'll know something then. In the meantime, I think we can expect a lot of censorship. And we can expect a lot of shenanigans and a lot of propaganda coming from all sides. Now, one other issue that's really starting to make its presence felt is the fact that we have now flipped 12 seats, gained 12 seats in the House of Representatives. This could very likely keep Nancy Pelosi from getting reelected as Speaker. You can call that a small victory. But in a way, in a lot of ways, it tells me that if in fact this voter fraud also extended into other down ballot races, that this could have stopped some Republicans from winning seats they should have won. It could have could have stopped John James from winning his Senate seat in Michigan. There could be other things affected by this, not just the top of the ticket, but the down ballot races could have been affected as well. But even with all that, the Republicans have managed to gain 12 seats in the House. And by gaining those 12 seats, plus those Democrats who voted against Nancy Pelosi for Speaker, this could now cause a situation where Pelosi cannot get the 218 votes that she needs to become Speaker. It could force the Republicans could have a little more leverage to get a vote on a better Speaker. That is a possibility, but it also, to me, highlights how badly McCarthy and the Republicans, House leadership, the Republicans, botched this opportunity. Maybe they were just hoping that Trump would carry him in on his coattails, and in a lot of ways he did. They just didn't count for the election rigging. But I think they had a golden opportunity to nationalize this election the way that Newt Gingrich did. And I think there was some kind of an effort by McCarthy to do something like that, but McCarthy just isn't very good. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, he seems like a reasonably nice enough guy. He's kind of milquetoast. I think he's got a weak spine. I think he would flip and become a neocon tomorrow. Remember, he was Paul Ryan's right-hand man. He was sucking up to Paul Ryan because he knew that he was next in line for leadership. I think that Kevin McCarthy is a self-serving deep stater. I believe that he would flip tomorrow on a dime. If he saw Trump's approval rating drop below 50%, he would be opposed to Trump tomorrow. I think this guy will go whichever way the wind will blow him. And I think he did a piss-poor job of capitalizing on a golden opportunity. And when you see now that these 12 seats that they picked up, they only needed 18. Another 6 seats, and they could have taken back the House. 6 more seats. Just a little bit better planning. A little bit more effort. And they could have taken back the House, even with a rigged election. I put that in the fail category by Kevin McCarthy. But there is some good news out there, and that is that that the House is, unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's going to be enough seats to flip it, although there's still some other races, but I don't think we're going to get to the 18. But the fact that we even gained seats is practically a miracle. And if we find out that this election was rigged, and I believe it was, and I believe the evidence will show it is, I don't know if that means that some of these close House races can go back and be evaluated. Because if I was a Republican running for a House seat in any of these states where that voting machine or that software was used and my race was within 1%, I'm going to want to go back and have a manual recount, hand recount, and an audit of the votes in my district. It doesn't take long to do a district-wide hand count. I think these Republicans ought to think long and hard right now. If your race was within 1 or 2, even 2%, I think that you should sue for a recount or an audit or something in your precinct or your district, because we're only 6 seats away from flipping the House. And that would be beneficial. Obviously, there's a big Senate race in Georgia. We'll have to see how that goes. Currently, Biden is ahead in Georgia. They're going through this recount. Supposedly, this recount will produce the correct result. But unfortunately, it's not what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing that what they got going on down there in Georgia is they still have 9 Democrats for every 1 Republican. It's 90% Democrats. They still are not allowing the Republican to get within 10, 20, 30 feet to where you can actually see and visually see the ballot. They're not verifying signatures in this recount in Georgia. And I'm very disappointed in Doug Collins because he's the guy that Trump put in charge to be the point man to make sure this gets done right in Georgia. But I've seen him on interview now 2 or 3 times since the recount, and he's basically given the impression, oh yeah, we're doing a recount right now, a hand recount, blah, 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 blah. I don't think he understands. I really don't think he understands. I don't think he's a bad guy. I just don't think he quite understands. But from what I'm hearing from people actually on the ground in the facility, this is just the same people counting the same bad votes. And that it's not really a legitimate recount or audit or anything else. It's just a continuation of the coup, of the cover-up, of the shams and the scams and the fraud. So, again, if you're one of those people who have a lot of faith, that's good. We need people with a lot of faith. As most of you know, I consider myself a realist. I look at all the overwhelming evidence we have and how many times we catch the deep state time and time and time again. We catch them red-handed with their hand in the cookie jar. But time and time again, it doesn't seem to matter. They seem to win and get their way every time. Every time. Maybe this time will be different. Maybe. Thank you so much. I certainly hope you got to watch this video on Monday morning. I'll be back the next time there's news. And we'll see where all this goes. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. Take care.